So I am proud to introduce.
She told me she was going to tell them a little bit there. How's everybody doing? Good, good. I'm doing fine. It's great to be here. Thank you for your kind introduction. And while I certainly don't come from privilege, I've had the privilege to serve with so many passionate advocates and stakeholders and communities, and whether serving our nation in uniform or serving in our General Assembly. I want to thank the members of the General Assembly who are here and the work that you do, or on Capitol Hill. A tad bit frustrating, but important institution. Got a few things done. Or now as your Attorney General, it's been a real privilege to be able to work with each and every one of you, and in those capacities, as I've set out to do my part in addressing issues around inequities and disparities and injustices in Maryland and around our country. So it's great to be here, and want to thank certainly the University of Baltimore School of Law. Dean Weiss, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for hosting this conference. It's a great turnout. And I also want to thank the Maryland Alliance for Justice, and not only for hosting today's conference, but the work that you do day in and day out. Your advocacy for evidence-based legislative and policy changes throughout Maryland, the work that you do in seeking effective alternatives to incarceration, the work that you do in addressing inequities where they exist throughout our state, and certainly the work that you do for creating opportunities for productive lives of those citizens who are returning from our prison. I want to say, as an aside, I met two young men who introduced themselves to me this afternoon. Two outstanding men from the short encounter I had with them, returning citizens. And what impresses me the most about these two young men is their willingness to take their experiences, the lessons that they've learned, the trials and tribulations that they have been through, and to pour that back into young people, just as they were when they first encountered our criminal system, to share with them their experiences, so as to be able to avoid some of what they experienced, and to persevere through that experience. So I don't know if those two young men are in this in the audience now, but thank you very much for introducing yourself to me and for the work that you're doing. To the dignitaries and others present, certainly who are making a difference each and every day in terms of reforming and improving our systems of justice, I applaud and thank you as well. So I'm pleased to be here today to share some thoughts on the urgent need to reshape, relook, revisit how we approach incarceration and rehabilitation. It is, again, a privilege to serve as Maryland's 47th Attorney General. And while many understand the position as representing state government and state agencies, and that's certainly an important duty and responsibility that we have, I don't lose sight, and I make sure that my lawyers and non-lawyer professionals don't lose sight that while we represent the state, we work for the people. We are the people's lawyers. And those people are the men and women who are in the care and custody of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, as well as the men and women who provide the custody and the care and the treatment for those. It's the small business owner, it's your neighbor, it's Marylanders with disabilities, it's wealthy Marylanders, it's everyone. We are the people's lawyer. This issue that we're discussing today certainly has deep historical context, and our concerns for Maryland's correctional system has never been more pressing. In Maryland, and I know that you are familiar with this data, these numbers, these appalling statistics, 71% of the prison population is Black, compared to African Americans making up only 31% of the population. This problem is particularly pronounced among younger adults between 18 to 24 years old, serving long prison terms. Nearly 80% of those serving over 10 years in prison as young adults are Black. We are second to none. We exceed the incarceration rate of young Black and brown men, and second to us is the state of Mississippi. And it is our young adults, especially from marginalized communities, who bear the brunt of extended sentences. The racial composition in our prison population certainly doesn't reflect the diversity of our state. Put simply, this is one of the most alarming racial disparities among many that exist in Maryland. So to truly understand the disparities that we face today, we need to consider the history that has shaped our present reality. The shackles of slavery, though physically removed, left an indelible mark on our nation. The promise of Reconstruction was betrayed, replaced by the scourge of segregation and Jim Crow laws that intentionally stripped Black people of their rights and attempted to subjugate us to a life of second-class citizenship. In the aftermath of the Civil War, instead of freedom, we witnessed the emergence of the convict leasing system, a sinister echo of slavery that exploited Black labor under the guise of punishment. Today's mass incarceration crisis is not a sudden phenomenon. It's an extension of the injustices that have pervaded our history and plagued our criminal system. Our current reality of disproportionate arrests, convictions, and sentencing has left Black and brown communities suffering the brunt of the legacy of slavery. The war on drugs that gained momentum in the late 20th century was, in truth, a war on communities of color. The data for Maryland underscores this reality, exposing the deeply rooted bias in drug-related arrests and sentencing. The mandatory minimum sentences and 3 strikes laws that followed further cemented a cycle of recidivism, disproportionately affecting individuals from marginalized backgrounds. But this isn't just about numbers on a page. It's about the lives torn apart, the families left fractured, and a potential stifled in so many individuals. The impact of incarceration reaches far beyond the prison walls. It resonates through neighborhoods, affecting education, employment, and future opportunities. We must remember the faces of those affected, men and women who deserved a chance but were ensnared in a system that failed them. So even today, the specter of discrimination persists. The school to prison pipeline denies Black and brown students an equal chance at education, steering them instead towards a future of incarceration. The blueprint for Maryland's future, an initiative that seeks to achieve equity in education, will fail to achieve its goals if we continue to over-discipline, suspend, expel, and otherwise treat our young Black and brown students, some of whom suffer from learning disabilities that are ignored, as criminals long before some of them can even spell the word. Racial profiling continues to plague law enforcement across the nation, leading to higher arrest rates among minority groups. So where do we go from here? Reducing this disparity is one of my top priorities for the Office of the Attorney General. It's consistent with the pledge that I made on July 3rd of this year to focus on equity in our systems of justice and our delivery of public services and benefits. This disparity has left a scar on our justice system that we are determined to heal. My commitment is not just about addressing the symptoms, but also to root out the underlying drivers that contribute to this disparity. So currently, I'm personally meeting with returning citizens, families of people who are incarcerated, advocates, and various stakeholders to hear directly from them. In fact, I just left the public defender, Natasha Darteague, this morning at a barber shop, and I'm going to rejoin her after this conference at 2 other barber shops to listen to the community about issues that we face and perhaps solutions that we can bring to address these issues. By involving those directly affected, our aim is to develop comprehensive strategies that holistically reduce this disparity. And our actions will be informed by the voices of the community and will be part of a broader effort to reshape the justice system so that it can stand as a model of fairness and equity. And I think that's what this conference is about today. So my office is deeply committed to driving change in Maryland's correctional landscape. And there are several things that we are responsible for that enables us to do just that. We, among others, in the Office of the Attorney General, have a responsibility to hold accountable those who are entrusted with the well-being and safety within our prisons, to foster a culture of responsibility. My office, whether it's prosecuting or defending, is on the front lines. Through our work representing the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, these are some of the things that with my attorneys and non-attorney professionals we seek to do. We've been active in developing initiatives that focus on the safety of both staff and the incarcerated population. We've worked on new regulations aimed at reducing the introduction of contraband into our institutions through the mail, and we've even worked on procurements and legislation to help prevent drone incursions into our prisons. My attorneys proactively review, and I don't pretend to believe that we're doing enough in this area. I'm not trying to suggest that we are, but this is where we are focusing, and under my leadership, we are stepping up our level, our intensity of focus. We proactively review training policies and practices, considering current and past lawsuits and complaints. You've got to learn from your lessons, right, of what's working and what's not working. So, for example, we worked with the department on revamping policies and training related to the use of force by correctional officers and the treatment of transgender inmates. As we examine cases filed against the department, we make suggestions to the secretary about any changes that should be made, including additional measures to protect the health and safety of the incarcerated population. And we also work on a regular basis with advocates for prisoners to address critical issues to avoid litigation, not just for the sake of avoiding litigation, but creating an environment in the institutions that is supportive of the health and the well-being of those who are housed in our facilities. When I say that I'm the people's lawyer, that I work for the people of Maryland, this is no less true for inmates and their families than it is for the correctional officers and staff who are responsible for their safety, well-being, and rehabilitation. So as far as those who have answered the call to serve within our correctional system, and I believe that the vast majority of them are noble men and women, we do defend the good. But when those unfortunate cases arise where one of our correctional officers or staff or officials doesn't follow the law, we move swiftly to investigate and, when warranted, to prosecute. It's critical that we maintain a culture of accountability. No one is above the law. We need committed, honest, and professional leaders in the field of corrections and public safety, and I can assure you that the vast majority are. In my correctional litigation division, our group of attorneys defend correctional officers and officials in civil lawsuits. We begin first by investigating whether the defendant was grossly negligent or acted with malice or acted outside the scope of his or her official duties. And if it is determined that they did not act with malice or gross negligence, then we will defend their conduct, even when it means, as it often does, that we can do things differently, we can do things better, we can make improvements that we learn from every experience within the life of the institution. However, bad things do happen, and if it rises to the level of criminal conduct, that's where my criminal division steps in. We have representatives on Maryland's Prison Corruption Task Force, who work with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners and local prosecutors to uncover and disrupt corruption in Maryland's jails and prisons. My organized crime unit has prosecuted several complex, long-term investigations of conspiracies aimed at smuggling contraband and contributing to violence within our prisons. Just this past May, we indicted 15 people in connection with contraband smuggling at Roxbury Correctional Institution. Earlier this year, we indicted and convicted 11 people in connection with another contraband smuggling conspiracy at Jessup. In 2021, we indicted 13 people for similar conspiracies at the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women, and in 2017, we indicted 26 defendants as part of a gang-related contraband and smuggling scheme also at Jessup. And in each of these cases, the criminal misconduct included inmates as well as correctional officers, correctional staff, or contract support staff. So no matter how they break the law, if the law is broken, we're going to take action. By addressing challenges and taking proactive measures, our goal is to ensure that our correction system is made up of people who are committed to the mission of rehabilitating our incarcerated population for successful reentry into the community. The call for reform brings us to an important juncture. Do we maintain the status quo, investigating, learning from our experiences, which is important, or do we embrace a more effective correctional oversight in our closed correctional environment? I firmly believe that we need an independent entity, the Correctional Ombudsman, to play a vital role in ensuring and the Ombudsman will play an important role in ensuring proper treatment of those who are incarcerated in Maryland. A capability and resource that is proactive and not reactive, that is independent, competent, fully resourced, and credible. As most, if not all of you know, this issue, as was mentioned in my introduction, is not uncharted territory. Just last year, the Maryland Senate rallied behind a bill that underscores the importance of such oversight. The absence of an independent oversight body within Maryland's prison system leaves incarcerated individuals without the protections and early interventions that such a watchdog could provide. This lack of oversight can deprive us of a meaningful opportunity to better address the various forms of abuse and neglect within our prisons. The establishment and operation of an Office of Correctional Ombudsman would play an essential role in protecting the rights of those incarcerated and ensuring their proper treatment. So why do we need a correctional ombudsman? It's about transparency, it's about accountability, it's about advocacy, and for respect within our institutions. The ombudsman would support incarcerated adults, much like the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit, which is in the Office of the Attorney General, does in our juvenile facilities. Safeguarding rights, preventing abuse, ensuring appropriate services and resources are provided so that people who've been incarcerated have the tools and opportunity to contribute positively once again in the future in our communities. By establishing an independent oversight body that focuses on ensuring fair and just treatment for youth within the Department of Juvenile Services, we've witnessed through this Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit, we've witnessed a positive transformation toward practices and the implementation of needed reforms. As a result, recidivism among young people who've been in the custody of DJS has been trending downwards, and systemic abuse is a relic of the past. The Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit contributed to a shift in the landscape of juvenile justice, including reductions in the numbers of incarcerated youth who do not represent a danger to public safety and do not need to be in a secure detention facility and committed placement program. This positive transformation has achieved through unbiased, it has been achieved through unbiased monitoring, the adoption of diversion programs and other alternatives to detention, and increased levels of accountability at DJS. That's not to suggest that DJS has overcome all its challenges, but the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit has contributed greatly to improve the facilities at the Department of Juvenile Services and its programs and its services. So the correctional ombudsman, like the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit, would be equipped to intervene promptly, recommending changes, and advocating for reforms that would reduce the likelihood of individuals being treated unfairly while incarcerated. However, the ombudsman legislation needs to be reintroduced and passed during the 2024 legislative session so that this important capacity, capability, and resource can begin. And I can tell you it doesn't rest solely on the shoulders of our members of the House of Delegates and the Maryland State Senate. It's going to take each and every one of us to be advocates in the halls of Annapolis to get that done. I cannot overemphasize the importance of equipping the correctional ombudsmen with the necessary resources to do what we need in an ombudsman. I'll just say by way of comparison, 3 or 4 years ago, the General Assembly created the Office of Special Ombudsman, Special Education Ombudsman, that resides in the Office of the Attorney General. Very important function to advocate on behalf of families whose children with special needs are in our schools. The General Assembly provided me 0 resources to get the job done. So we need not just the authority to do the work, we need the resources to get the work done. Because without proper resources, including the funding, the staffing, access to departmental records and personnel, the effectiveness of an independent oversight body would be undermined. We've seen that when the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit has resources, it gets things done. Because after all, and I think most people would agree, constructive policies and legislation without the resources to operationalize them are just good ideas, and we need more than just good ideas. So let me close, and I know I'm going to take a few questions and perhaps state the obvious. The journey towards rethinking corrections and rehabilitation in Maryland is far from simple. Yet, with courage to learn from the past and a determination to reshape the future, we can achieve a correctional system that truly embodies our Maryland values of fairness, equity, and justice. The creation of a correctional ombudsman is a crucial next step to ensuring that the rights of imprisoned people are protected and that the pathway to rehabilitation is paved with opportunity and signposted by equity. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to come by and share some thoughts and observations on what we're doing.